Hey everyone, Saul from Three Kingdoms Games here. Coming to you today with some War of the Spark. Now, as most of you know, the new set that's coming out for Standard is War of the Spark. That's coming out on the 3rd of May. The pre-release is the 27th and the 28th of April. Now, War of the Spark is the next Standard legal set. There's going to be 36 Planeswalkers in the set, and there is a guarantee of a Planeswalker in every pack. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do this. I don't know if every rare and mythic is going to be a Planeswalker, or if there's going to be multiple versions of the Planeswalkers in the set. Like maybe there'll be no other legendary creatures, named creatures, whatever you may have. But for those of you who don't know, Magic actually has this really deep kind of rich story that especially started really ramping up and getting more in depth with the introduction of Planeswalkers back in Lorwyn. Now, that was the first time Planeswalkers existed, and that was before Mythics, so they were rares. Now, Bolas is the big bad. This is going to be the end of a story that's been arcing for almost 10 years since it really picked up in Shards of Alara. Now, this story was mentioned offhanded in the original pre-2003, pre the modern era, Dominaria stuff. But it's really been coming to a head over the last few sets, considering how much of the story was involved in Ixalan and in Kaladesh, as well as now Ravnica. Even Dominaria had touches of it. So what I figure is, since some of you don't realize how deep this story is, some of you probably didn't even realize there was a story until I just mentioned it. So welcome to part 1 of, effectively, War of the Spark story time. I am going to explain to you how the 36 Planeswalkers tie in for the ones I can, and other ones I'm just going to get to hypothesize about, and that's going to be more in part 2. So, first of all, we have Nicol Bolas and effectively his Legion of Doom. Now, Nicol Bolas, for those of you who don't know, is the big bad. He has murdered his entire family. Well, not his entire family, but most of his family. He's left his nieces alive, and I believe his sister-in-law is still alive somewhere. He left Ugin for dead, and that's his twin brother. He's killed Ajani's mentor. He unwittingly, let out the Eldrazi when he went for the Eye of Ugin on Zendikar. He's went and sent Tezzeret for the Planar Bridge on Kaladesh, because when Planeswalkers walk from one plane to another, they can't take anything with them. So that way he can jump from plane to plane, taking stuff with him. He sent Vraska to Ixalan to get the Immortal Sun, because the whole of Ixalan was set up to be a giant trap for Nicol Bolas, and this was set up by Azor and Ugin. So, huge, horrible person. He's effectively the Thanos of the MTG universe, because he's behind everything, doing these little plots, little things, kind of pushing things in a certain direction, because he is this power-hungry madman. So, comes to Ravnica and decides to appoint Planeswalkers in prominent positions in 5 of the 10 guilds in order to gain control over Ravnica. So this is where we get to his kind of like Legion of Doom, as I'm referring to it as at this point. So you have Domri Rad, who got placed in charge of Golgari. Sorry, Gruul. Golgari's Vraska. In charge of Gruul. Really, one-dimensional character. You don't need to know that much about Domri Rad, but he was placed there as the leader by Bolas. Next up, you have Ral Zarek. Now, Ral Zarek's actually an interesting character, given that he has this weird divided loyalties between Niv Mizzet, the leader of his guild, and Bolas, who he's following. So Bolas tells him to create this thing called Project Lightning Bug. Now, this was also something that was created by Niv Mizzet and also by Ral. Project Lightning Bug, for those of you who don't know, is a beacon that was created on Ravnica in order to attract more Planeswalkers. Bolas wanted to probably kill Planeswalkers and take their sparks in some way to power himself up higher. Niv Mizzet and Ral wanted to use it to attract the Living Guild Pact, who is Jace, steal the energy from the Living Guild Pact from Jace and give it to Niv Mizzet. As well as Niv Mizzet, fearing Bolas, has now used Project Lightning Bug to try to attract more Planeswalkers to try to persuade them to help fight Bolas. So we got a couple characters doing the same thing. But Dovin Bond figured out what was going on, or at least kind of did, and sabotaged the project because he figured out the part with the Living Guild Pack, but didn't figure out the other parts of it. So we're going to see how that shakes out in War of the Spark. Dovin Bond, first introduced in Kaladesh, followed Tezzeret because he saw the Planner Bridge, thought that was a great idea, wanting to see how this was going to shake out, thought Tezzeret's this great mastermind genius, ends up going to Ravnica, realizing that Tezzeret isn't the man behind everything but Bolas is, swears fealty to Bolas. After Esperia is killed by Vraska, is placed into a position of power as the Guildmaster of Azorius, and he has this fanatical idea of wanting perfect order across the planes. So he's like the extreme OCD villain that wants everything to be the same. Kaya, who's Orzhov, was brought in to kill the Obzedat by Bolas, and subsequently was then placed in power of Orzhov by Bolas. She's been doing stuff with taxes and letting spirits go and all kinds of crazy nonsense. And then lastly in this Legion of Doom is Vraska, who I think is actually one of the most interesting characters in it, because she has this really weird story going on with her right now. So, her and Jace have been going at it for years across Ravnica. Now Jace, whenever he goes to a new plane, seems to lose his memory to some degree. Ixalan completely lost his memory, gains them back. Him and Vraska are kind of head-to-head. Vraska was sent there by Bolas to go get the Immortal Sun. They end up getting along. Jace forgives Vraska for everything. She kind of falls in love with Jace. They hatch a plan in order to take down Bolas. And then, so Bolas can't read her mind, because Bolas does this regularly, apparently, reading people's minds to make sure that they're not traitors or whatever, figuring out their deepest desires, if that's his thing. Jace steals the memories from her of setting up this plan, of coming up with anything, and then sets a trigger so those memories will all flood back to her at a given moment. So right now what we effectively have is Romeo and Juliet meets the Manchurian Candidate. So there you have it. That is part one of the War of the Spark story. So those are the bad guys, kind of. If you like what you saw here, please like and subscribe to the channel. It's an easy way to support us. You can always drop into store to see what's going on. There's a store in Toronto and a store in Markham. Follow our blogs at threekingdomsgames.com, as well as you can follow us on all major social media, and that's in the description box below. I'll see you next time.